Jay True here. I'm tired of typing this, so I was going to say it. The, some of you are really confused about the idea that you think subjective reality is the opposite of objective reality. And others of you will dress this same idea into the idea of relativity versus objectivity. So half of you think subjectivity is the opposite of objectivity, and the other half of these people I'm talking about thinks that relativity is the opposite of objectivity. And so because you're making that assumption, you're then proving, quote quote, proving that objectivity must exist because I'm implying that its opposite exists. And I don't know where you thought or were told that this is logic, because this actually doesn't fit inside of any kind of logical paradigm or any kind of system. In fact, it actually violates the scientific method, because if you're going to prove that the world is objective, A, all of us would have the same experience. B, none of us would disagree. C, the fact that you were disagreeing with me would actually be a proof of subjectivity, of relativity. Its literal proof is in your face that someone has a different perspective than you do, and you're claiming that because they have a different perspective, they're wrong because you cannot have a different perspective because the world is objective. And the common characteristic of this argument is always anger. It's always, James, you're raw, and it's some sort of bad name. It's usually a label. There's a lot of times someone will try and say word salad, as if a word salad is a reflection of the speaker. But word salad would be what anyone would hear if they were so angry at an idea that they could not process their own thoughts. This would be a symptom of that. And we see this all the time. So if you want to argue for objectivity, first of all, I say go for it. I have no beef for that. Your cosmology does not threaten mine. But secondly, why don't you just prove it? Why don't you just show us how all of us can go to the park and have the exact same experience at exactly the same time in exactly the same place, because objectivity is real. And the reason why you can't prove that is because you can't do that. We do not actually have a framework where that is demonstratable. But the assumption is there, and I have no beef with you writing your assumptions all over town. I believe this is how we build our world. I don't even need your assumption to be right. If it gets you to town, I think that is good enough to have. But when you are so angry at someone else who's writing a different assumption, maybe your idea is kind of weak, right? Maybe it needs a little bit more thought into it. So I want you to be able to have a world that you feel is objective, because it's going to make a lot of you comfortable. But also, I need you to understand that it's not true. It's really not even provable. Not only have you not proven it, no one has proven it. In fact, it's the opposite. If you want an analogy to fit, I think World of Warcraft is a perfect example. I don't actually play that game, but any multiplayer game is implying that there is an objective World of Warcraft that exists somewhere. And even though you're playing it on your computer, that event is actually happening somewhere else. And if you study computer programming, or if you just kind of use your brain, you realize that's not the case. That nowhere in the world is there a World of Warcraft game actually playing. No. What's happening is that on different computers in different areas, there's a distributed series of silicon recordings that are simply storing stats. And that none of those stats are even viewable or even have a perspective outside of the subjective player that's playing that game, right? I'm using the subjective just so you can kind of play with the logic yourself too, right? So We play the game because we want to believe there is this world that's there. But those of us who understand our environment know that that's a hypothetical and that we construct ideas like objectivity to give us the ability to kind of save calories and to just formulate things that we can share. It's kind of a compression. You and I place ideas into latent space. We turn that into hypothetical. That hypothetical is compressible through verbal thought or through writing. And then when you read it, you decompress that information. But that information is still going to be read into your personal cosmology, into your system. And when we are ready to embrace the idea that all of us have our own systems, this place is going to be just even more beautiful than it already is. So this is really where we've been. We're just simply waiting for the knuckle-draggers to kind of catch up and not be so freaked out all the time when they start to understand that this hypothetical thing that they're clinging to really isn't serving them anyway.